Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and it's been a while since we've done a Cuomo press conference. I believe the last one that we covered was the Propaganda Fest with Rosie Perez and Chris Rock, where Cuomo thought the "and then he was dead" joke by Chris Rock was hilarious. It was a joke about somebody on video who was enjoying himself in Florida at a party who is not dead, I assure you. And just the way he cackled about it, and then when they did their little photo op with the gloves and it was rather repulsive. It was something we had to cover. Now, today we're going to cover some big time threats by the American gangster, Cuomo. Okay, Andrew Cuomo, the gangster, because this was a gangster-esque talk. This is how they talk out of both sides of their mouth. And when I say they, I'm talking about politicians, I'm talking about lawyers, I'm talking about professional liars and PR experts that are putting on a national stage for a predator class agenda. And that's what this is. All right. So why was this important? Number one, we saw phases start to open up throughout New York State. And especially to me, guys, I was able to go to an actual happy hour on Friday. I did a walk and talk with myself on the way down to that because it was so exciting for me. I had actual beers at an actual bar and talked to actual girls. I saw my actual buddies. I shook actual hands, and I felt like an actual human being again. And Cuomo wants to take that all away. He wants to take it all away. He wants to threaten local governments and municipalities. And how are they enforcing this? He wants to directly threaten law enforcement. In fact, a large segment of this we're not even going to play, but it's talking about written up programs, how to defund the police department. You know, he talks correctly about the demilitarization and certain aspects of that, but we're not even going to cover it because it's not important. What you have to see is the outright threats to businesses, and not only businesses, to shut entire parts of the state down again. All that, and he even comments on whether universities are going to be opening up in New York in the fall, and I got news for you, not looking good. But before we get into any of that, I want to remind people during COVID-19 84, we are fully demonetized on this platform. $5, $10, $15 means the world to me. Link in the description, big donors. Again, we're going to try to get out of this state. New York is no good, and you're going to find out why right now. New York, again, forget about the contact tracing army of Michael Bloomberg. Forget about Eric Schmidt reimagining the state. Forget about all these cuts that are about to come. Okay? Right now, he's Gestapo-like telling you about all these complaints, right? Remember when the Nazis had their little narcs? Now people are calling in over 25,000 complaints on businesses. And if you don't think it's also rival businesses that aren't ready to open up against others, that's another aspect of this. So if you can support me, please do. Remember, guys, all my documentary films, Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and Shade the Motion Picture are available for free right here. Check them out after the video. And again, guys, actual beers with actual, bartenders. They had to wear the masks. Awful. Sitting down. You got to wear a mask to enter. There's all these arbitrary rules that mean nothing, and we're going to get to Cuomo actually admitting that too. Again, he speaks out of both sides of his mouth with a forked tongue. So let's play some of Cuomo here.
They can change in a week. You get undisciplined, you'll see those numbers change in a week. And once they change, you can't change them back that quickly. Now, we're getting reports from all across the state that there are large gatherings, social distancing is being violated, people are not wearing masks.
Wow.
We have gotten 25,000 complaints to the state of businesses that are in violation of the reopening plan. 25,000 complaints. We have never received more complaints in a shorter period of time.
Now let's stop it there. Think about that. They've never received, they've got now a nice amount of people in so much fear that they will rat out their neighbors, that they will rat out small businesses for not following draconian orders like putting tape on the floor and making people sit 6 feet apart and only being at 50% capacity. And don't worry, the threats are going to come, and they're going to come to local governments, local law enforcement, and small businesses via what? Their liquor license and the state liquor authority. So guess what? Your police don't want to enforce it? We'll find a way. We'll take your license.
25,000. Just think about that. What's alarming about the 25,000 is the volume, but it also shows how smart people are and how offended people are that they're calling and complaining.
Think about that.
This is a time in history we've never seen before. Think about how concerned New Yorkers are, not just to see the violation.
See, I want to think about it another way, because not just to see the violation, but make a call or file a complaint. Yeah, that's how brainwashed they are. And he's praising them like a Pavlovian dog. Yes, you've succumbed to the fear. Yes, you will narc out your neighbor. Yes, we will take out selective businesses with selective enforcement.
But then to care enough to come back and write a letter or call registering the complaint. You know why? They're afraid for themselves. They walk past the business, they see the business is violating the rules, and they're saying, my health is jeopardized. My health. And that's why they're complaining. 25,000, especially at bars and restaurants.
Oh, bars and restaurants. We're gunning for you, mom and pop. You're not McDonald's? You're not doing DoorDash? You're not essential? Oh, no, no, no. Oh, no, no. Big Daddy Cuomo's going to let you know. This isn't how it's going to roll. This is when the authoritarianism comes in.
Okay? This is the situation, and these are the facts. Well, they're not being ethical, they're not being moral, they're not being good New Yorkers. Great. They're also violating the law. This is a question of violating the law. Not just feel guilty. You're violating the law. All right? And this is a very serious situation, and I want to make sure everybody knows the consequences here.
The consequences here. Okay, again, we've had thousands of people arm in arm protesting for weeks in New York City and throughout New York State. And now they are about to threaten the liquor licenses of businesses via the SLA and a volunteer snitch squad that you've created through your propaganda and fear. Feel so proud, Mr. Cuomo.
A bar or restaurant that is violating these rules can lose their liquor license. State liquor authority inspectors are out. We have a task force of state investigators who are out. You can lose your liquor license. And that is a big deal for a bar or a restaurant. We are not kidding around with this. You're talking about jeopardizing people's lives.
Now, another really interesting aspect that's going to be coming up during this lecture/threat fest, right, is that they're talking about, we don't need real detectives because all of this stuff's already posted on social media. That's the era we're living in. We'll just use social media to target people with evidence that's provided by your customers that you're not enforcing social distancing or your overcapacity. And then we'll take your license from you. We didn't like your cash-based business anyway.
It's a legal violation. And the SLA inspectors are out there. I am telling you that. I called a couple of bars and restaurants myself.
Oh.
Where I saw pictures of the situations that were in their bars and restaurants. And I said to them, you're playing with your license. There is no excuse, well, I told people and they did it, even though I told them.
You're playing with your license, says the mafioso man to the gentleman he's enforcing on. You got a nice family there. You got a nice business there. Guess what? I could take it like that. I'm the guy. Me.
You are responsible for the people in your establishment. There is no excuse, well, the local legislator told me I could do this. No one can tell you that you can violate the law. There is nobody who can tell you that. Well,
see that? Local legislator. You see, nobody can tell you you can violate the law that I made. Actually, yeah. My sheriff's supposed to be the one that wants to enforce the law. And just so you know, my police chief hasn't been wearing a mask. Is that a problem, Mr. Cuomo? I think it's an advantage. I think it's somebody that hasn't bought into the hysteria and hype. I think it's a guy that realizes the situation is ludicrous. But no. You'll use your thugs, especially since you know that there are about to be massive layoffs nationwide and in this state especially, because there's no way we're going to get $60+ billion from the federal government. But continue with your threats.
my brother said, as long as, no, I don't care what your brother said. You violate the law, you can lose your license. And you will. We're not kidding around about this. If you are an individual, you can't violate the open container law. This is an open container law. You can't stand on the sidewalk drinking a beer. You're violating the open container law.
And this is very interesting, too, because there's been talks now, if this is going to continue, for my town and other towns to shut down their main street to allow bars and restaurants to have more open areas where people can be. And, maybe that's something he would allow. Probably not the way he's talking, eh?
The social distancing, mask wearing, these are legal violations. Protesters and police, the law applies to you. Well, I'm protesting. Yeah, I understand that. You can protest. The law still applies to you. Police department, your job is to enforce the law. Why don't you follow the law, right? It's a very bad signal when you see police people who are not wearing a mask and not following the law. How can you enforce the law if you're not following the law?
Well, actually, I think it's a positive signal that they're not going to enforce a ludicrous law that you've mandated that's now proven to not have any health benefits whatsoever. And in a disease that you admit during this whole thing that is completely on the decline, even in New York State. And we, again, had thousands of people next to each other and no outbreaks. But no. You're like, wait on the data. Now, you're waiting on what? The predator class to ease the situation, to get what you want, to have a reimagining of the entire state with your billionaire buddies.
Right? So wear a mask. And also to local electeds who are in charge of the police department, it's your responsibility to make sure your police department follows the law.
See that?
To local governments, you are responsible for monitoring the compliance with the reopening plan. That is the local government's responsibility. And we've been very clear about this from day one. We go to phase 1, we go to phase 2, we go to phase 3. The local government is responsible for compliance.
Again, I'm threatening the police force and I'm threatening the local governments. And remember, we're about to defund a lot of things, folks. You're already going to have to fire a lot of people. So whoever's going to be a good minion better step up to the plate and maybe you'll get to keep your job.
Mayors, county executives, you have to do your job. I understand it's an unpopular position to have to enforce the law. I understand nobody wants to go to a sidewalk with people drinking and say, you people can't drink on the sidewalk. I understand that. I understand nobody wants to say to a bar, restaurant, you know, you're only supposed to be in an open air area and you're not supposed to be violating social distancing. I understand that. I understand it's not popular. I get it. You know what's more unpopular? If that region closes because that local government did not do their job.
Again, all arbitrary, all bullshit.
And that can happen. Utah, Oregon had to reverse their reopening plan. Before I reverse a statewide position, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to reverse it in those areas that are not in compliance with the rules. And I'm going to reverse it in those areas where those local governments did not comply with the law. That is what is going to happen here. And I am warning today, in a nice way, consequences of your actions. We have 25,000 complaints statewide. I'm not going to turn a blind eye to them.
Snitch force.
New Yorkers deserve better. Manhattan and the Hamptons are the leading areas in the state with violations. These are not hard to spot violations. People send video of these violations. You can look it up on social media.
See that? You can look it up on social media. Very easy to build a case against these people. And we're going to have state liquor authority undercover investigators in these places. And then we will selectively enforce whose licenses we want to take during COVID-1984. We understand many of you barely survived through this time period. But listen, we're going to make it even more difficult. And we're going to use our authoritarian powers to also see who the good police are going to be that are going to follow orders, and the good government officials are going to be that can follow our orders.
You don't need a detective squad to go out and find it. They are rampant, and there's not enough enforcement. I am not going to allow situations to exist that we know have a high likelihood of causing an increase in the spread of the virus.
And again, this doesn't pertain to protests. It would pertain to protests if it was just protesting the lockdown. But now that it's a racially based protest that is approved by my party, well, then that's okay. Then the science is somehow different, right?
And if we increase the spread of the virus in Manhattan because of bars and restaurants, well, then everybody in Manhattan is going to suffer. And that's not fair either. Local government, do your job. Local government, do your job. If we have to close, then people are going to hold you accountable. Bars and restaurants, do your job. Or you can have an SLA violation and possibly loss of your license. Individuals who are violating the law, you can be held liable also. We got here because people did the right thing. And if we stop doing the right thing, we'll see a very different trajectory. And I am telling you that you look at all the other states, it's not hard to figure out what is happening here.
Yeah, there is no huge spike in all these other states that they keep talking about. He always refers to that. It's nonsense.
It's happened in half the states in the nation. So far, we have been the exception. And we're not going to go back to that dark place because local government didn't do its job or because some individuals exploited the situation. Besides the legal violation, because our success here was not based on what government did.
You know what? I can't. It's what you did. I can't do it. I can't do it. We gotta fast forward a little bit higher. Here we go.
That is a big change. You know, you can say, oh, it's only 10 to 25. Yeah, it's 10 to 25 times 50,000, right? Because that would go all across the board. That's a lot of people. And those mass gatherings, that's the vital area of vulnerability. That was New Rochelle.
See, right now he's talking about like graduations and possibilities of Little League and things like that. But now he's going to bring back New Rochelle, right? But going to just disregard the protest until someone calls him out on it. And then he's able to talk out of both sides of his mouth.
Don't forget what we learned. New Rochelle, first hotspot in the United States, first cluster, one guy goes to a religious ceremony. One guy. We have the #1 cluster. It is fire through dry grass in that situation. So you're going right to one of the seminal questions, you know. Everything we do is trying to open the economic activity, reducing the density in the gatherings. You're going right to the heart of the beast there.
Just to play this out a little bit, what is the difference between, say, a high school graduation and a piece of protest where you might have thousands of people in close proximity with masks versus, say, a high school graduation?
First of all, we don't know.
Oh.
Well, we don't know what happened at the protests.
Oh.
We're still waiting to find out. Now, the only good news, and you have a lot of people studying these protests all across the nation, the good news about the protests, they happened when our infection rate was way down, right? We had a less than 1% infection rate when the protests happened. If those protests had happened when our infection rate was higher, forget it. Forget it. You'd see it today in the numbers. The only saving grace was, by the time they happened, the infection rate was just about as low as it is now, right?
So again, right here, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth. He's admitting the infection rate is low, and that if it was a lot higher, we already seen a spike, but now we've got to wait for another spike? No, he just wants to keep everything closed down for his billionaire buddies. Okay, and now we're going to get to the schools, because this is important. You know, this is going to be devastating to economies.
Is there a ribbon cutting tomorrow on the bike path?
I have to see tomorrow.
Oh, he's so
But if
excited
I were
about the
you,
ribbon cutting on his
I would
father's
get on my
bridge.
bike and start riding now.
Oh.
South.
Families on expectations for the fall for schools, universities, colleges. People are chomping at the bit, and they're worried about bills and things like that. Like, am I staying over at the school? Am I going to be distance learning?
Yeah, we don't know yet. Nobody can tell you yet.
Oh.
Nobody can tell you what the fall looks like. They can give you guesses, maybe this, maybe that. But any determination anybody would make today would be subject to change depending on what happens with the virus between now and then, right?
Let's be honest, even if it keeps on this pace, you're not going to want to reopen schools fully. I already know what you're going to do, because you're going to talk about a second wave. You're destroying economies. You're threatening local governments. You're threatening local police forces. You're threatening local businesses. That's the reality of what we're watching here, guys.
Nobody's going to say, I'm going to open the schools, no matter what the facts, no matter how bad the virus spread. 22 states are seeing an uptick already. We might have an uptick. Whatever happens, I'm going to open the schools. Nobody would say that. I'm going to go to work, guys.
There he goes. He's got a nice tan. You know, he's doing it gangster style. There he is, Mario Cuomo. Folks, again, fully demonetized on this platform. $5, $10, $15, big donors. That's how we're doing it. We're leaving this state. Hopefully my plates are in the mail, and I am getting ready to get the F out of here. It is about time, and we're going to try to find that freedom. We might hit some of these protests up. Let's start talking to people again, because what's going to happen to this state and possibly the whole country economically, it is beyond devastation. So support me while you can, while I'm still on this platform. Make sure you're thumbs up. You're getting the notifications. You are subscribed. You're sharing the links with other people. Remember, I am a documentary filmmaker. Loose Change, Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, and Shade the Motion Picture, all free right here. And over on Rockfin, if you just create an account, you can now watch the Meeting of the Minds. James Corbett, Jay Dyer is on there, Luke Radowski, Josh Sigurdsson, OBDM, so many others, Ben Swan. Some real OGs of the game. That's the first meeting, or first hour of that meeting. That's free on Rockfin if you create a free account. If you actually support me, you also get a lot of other premium content. So guys, I just want to say, I'd like to go to another happy hour. I don't like the snitch force. I don't like the threat of force against local governments and local police officers with masks and social distancing lunacy, when you can't even acknowledge there's any difference from these protests, because there isn't any, because it makes no scientific sense whatsoever. This is about authoritarianism, and it needs to end. Guys, I love you. It's not about left or right, conservative or liberal, all right? It is about right and wrong, and it's about a transhumanist agenda that is against all of us in this new form of control via the media, military, industrial complex. Thank you all, and I'll see you on the flip side.